This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Been able to carry these processes through previously. Both of you gentlemen, we welcome you in a way in which we normally do. We go around the African continent every week. We land in a different country and we come back with their proverbs. Dennis does, at least. And he's literally actually come off a plane. We would like to share that proverb with you. He'll tell you where we are. And we'd love to get your interpretation of it. All right.
So today we are in Ivory Coast, also known as Cote d'Ivoire. And
fun fact about it is 40% of cocoa beans that the world consumes comes from that country. So there's a high possibility, guys, that the chocolate might just originated from Ivory Coast.
It's very possible.
Hey? Yeah. And then, so we also, another fun fact about Ivory Coast, when you hear Drogba, you know Ivory Coast. When you hear Gavinho, you know Ivory Coast. When you hear big Yaya Toure, Ivory Coast.
Yes.
Kenya, when you hear Okari. Ogam. Okari. You know Kenya. But let's go to the proverb today. A single tree cannot make a forest. A single tree cannot make a forest. I'll start with you, Balozi. How would you interpret that? What does that mean?
Oh, that's a profound quote. What comes to mind, I'll say, is that a forest is much more about an independent unit. It's about how the tree, the animals, the plants, the flora, fauna, the whole ecosystem comes together. I'll say it's about how a lot of these units come together, help each other, support each other, and that's how it thrives as a system. So what I take away from it is one and one is more than two. There are some synergies that come together and increase the value of it.
Yeah. So how would you interpret that?
Precisely like I said, I think for me it's the place of a community in an enterprise. For you to be able to achieve much, for you to be able to get more done, you need to be more than just one person. So the need for community, collaboration, coordination amongst the various components of a society, in this case trees, then becomes important.
Well said.
Indeed. Absolutely. And, even as we go into this conversation, I'm just thinking already overwhelming numbers, and then how are you able to sort it out? We're going to look at the Indian subcontinent and how elections are carried out, but we're going to do that coming from the Kenyan experience and also looking into a future experience that Kenya hopes to have. So we'd like to start with you, Marcus, and you've been looking into observing elections in Kenya over time. Let's look at procedure and numbers. How has that operated in the past? Kenya tops has never gone beyond 21 million votes. Never. Beyond 20 million votes. Regardless of who have registered or who not, right? So we're talking 20 million votes. Maybe all of those votes are cast in one day, and maybe it takes 3-4 days, 5 days, and then you start to hear, maybe some days, 24 hours later, 3 days after that. If it goes into court, then we're in the whole thing for another 2 weeks. But more or less, about a week or so, all of this happens over time. From an observer point of view, and then, one of the followers, how would you say that elections are carried out in Kenya? And I'm not talking procedure, I'm talking overall general feeling.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's interesting that the numbers you're talking about. So in terms of numbers, we are about 22 million registered voters.
Yes.
In terms of how we conduct our elections, generally speaking, in the country. So we do 6 ballots on a single day. Important to note that this is something that is not very unique to our country, but it's very unique, generally speaking, for first-time voters. So we do 6 ballots. We have the county elections and the national elections happening on the same day. So it's considerably a very massive exercise, comparative to the region. The second thing that I would like to say is that, again, the commission, that is the election management body, the IEBC, is the body that is mandated to conduct these elections. So it may outsource the officials, like, get hold of the polling officials, either teachers, farmers, traders, to support that exercise. And up to 500,000 election officials are engaged on the elections day.
Okay.
So it's a massive training that is done at the national level, cascaded at the regional levels, then they're deployed on the elections day. Then, of course, the election officials will include not only the presiding officers and their deputies, but also clerks, the police officers. So it is an exercise that is well planned and well thought through. Of course, a number of actions then occur, including educating the voters on what not to do and what to do, looking at the procedures in terms of observers, media, and other actors and agents are also allowed in a polling station. So it's essentially, in my view, as an observer, a very transparent process where everyone is allowed. If you are accredited by the commission, then you have an access to these processes, and you can monitor them, you can observe them, and of course probably give you a view in terms of their compliance to the legal framework and other institutions and other international best practices.
Best practices.
Yes.
Okay, Rishab. Let's go to the Indian subcontinent, which, give or take, 1 billion people. All right? And an election, you have one for regional body county, what would equate to a county in Kenya, that is larger than Kenya in terms of number. That's just one area. Give us your overall look about how an election is carried out and how many registered voters do we see in Kenya, and how long does it take for people to go and cast their ballots?
Okay. Thank you so much for the question. Since you were just comparing the counties to a state, to the whole of Kenya for numbers, I'll just say our population is around 1.4 billion, of which in the last elections in 2024, we had over 960 million eligible voters.
These are registered?
These are registered voters.
Okay, all right.
And the people who voted were a little over 650 million.
650 million
people
votes. All right.
went and cast their vote.
Okay.
So it's like the whole of African population going to vote together, just for comparison. And how the vote is cast, I'll say starts before dawn. And in terms of the processes and organization, it's very similar to what Marcus just said. We have the Election Commission of India, which is the overarching body that looks after the organization of elections. And from there, it flows down. It's a constitutional body. And we also, for instance, Marcus just said that 500,000 people are in the part of organizing the process. In India, that's 15 million people who are involved in the process of getting the election done.
In one day, this election happens?
No,
in
this
one
election doesn't happen in one day, of course, because the numbers are so huge. For instance, in the 2024 election, which just happened last year, we had it was around 44 days that the election went across 7 phases. Because, again, these are many people. And India is also a very, very diverse country, right? So geographically, these are places which are very distant from each other. So it's a phase-wise election. And but for one constituency, it's designated that a person will go on this day. That day is a holiday for us. You go in the morning, you cast your vote, and then you come back. That's more or less how it looks like.
Marcus, you hear about 900 million registered voters, and then you hear 600 million individuals who come out to vote. And you still look at the logistical aspect of it all. In Kenya, we talk about 22 million people, and the numbers who came out to vote still low if you compare. But then again, in managing the logistics of these, one would argue, is always a nightmare. And with increased numbers in the coming elections, that still is going to be a nightmare. And one would want, if we just compare how Balozi will respond on how India has managed to handle the logistical nightmare and how Kenya should learn from them, or vice versa.
I think just before we started, we had this conversation with him in terms of you're talking about over 900. You say 900 million registered voters, out of which you have about 650 million Indians standing out to vote. So you're talking about now the strategic materials alone. To transport the ballot boxes, the ballot papers, to print them, the stamps, assuming they use the same thing that we use. That is, in terms of scale, in terms of planning, in terms of thinking, in terms of transportation, is massive exercise. Unlike they told me during our chit chat that, unlike our country where we have to outsource, the polling officials, in India everybody's involved. You told me civil servants are used in managing these elections. You can't try that in our country, that you have a chief or a police or an OCS, or you have someone else coming to run your elections.
Why?
Kenyans don't do that. We don't involve government officials in our elections. So
is it a legal issue, or
it's a trust issue? It's a trust issue. So again, maybe we'll say it. I think for in terms of with the 22, look at even the printing of the ballot boxes, papers. It's I think I would like to hear how they do their printing, what they print. In country or out country, that is also very important. But in our case, in terms of logistics, it is a nightmare. So you talk about 6 ballot papers, assuming that in every polling station in our country, the cap is at 700 voters per polling station. So you talk about 700 times 6 ballots. That then of course you have a few excesses here and there for the cases of where a person might need more than one. And then you transport them across the 44,000 plus polling stations spread across the 1450 electoral wards in our country. So the commission must hire. It must hire. Yet, government has vehicles also. So we hire transport companies to transport these materials. You also hire police officers to help in terms of security of these materials. You also hire where they are stored. So outsourcing this is as a cost implication, but also a trust implication.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, if I may, how did, because one thing that jumps out at us right now is the trust issue. And it wouldn't just be India, that there are other jurisdictions. The United States, for example, runs its entire election on a volunteerism program, whereby their folks, your normal Joe or Jane, could actually sign up to be an election volunteer in the next election, and they get their accreditation and they're good to go. So how did the Indian subcontinent, whether it's a governance issue, how did you get people to trust that somebody could be working in another capacity and not necessarily have to be a member of staff of the Electoral Commission to work in an election? How do you do that?
Right. I think it has a lot to do with the history and from where we have come. Because, see, in India, the civil services are independent, and enjoy a lot of trust from the people. And by civil servants, I mean all parts of the government machinery. So these are police officers, these are, as you mentioned, clerks, and these are administrative officers, these are revenue officers. So it's a whole of a government exercise that happens, because again, if you look at the numbers, when I say we are looking at 15 million people who are involved in the process of organizing the elections and going to different places of the country, you really can't have that many people as volunteers, because then that includes, because in India we have more trust in the government system and the people that are in place than the volunteers, I'd say. Because it's mandated, it's structured, and these people have been trained, know what they're doing. And at the end of the day, it's the trust comes from the fact that these elections have happened many times in the past, over the last more than 75 years of our electoral democracy. So that trust has built over time, I'd say.
Okay. Marcus, when you talk about trust and civil servants, one would always say at any given point that a civil servant will always speak the language of the government. And we talk about, say, let's take, for example, the 2027 general election, that if President William Ruto would be running for second term, one would assume that the civil servants would be singing to his songs. So pretty much the trust aspect of trusting a civil servant to deliver that, throw that out of the door. But here we're talking about an election that civil servants are there, they know their role, they are independent, and they do their job. In Kenya, the electoral agency itself is independent, and one would want to say it is independent. But then again, it is the body that is mandated to deliver the elections to Kenyans. So how do we then as a country deal with the trust issue and ensure that whoever has been given the mandate to deliver, whether it's prescribed in the constitution, that IEBC, and even if it's hiring or whatever, that Kenyans will get to trust them and that they will offer a credible election?
Yeah, thank you. I think for me, the major problem we have in our country in terms of trust, you trust your M-Pesa systems, you trust your teacher, you trust your doctor, when you go, your pilot, the matatu driver in the morning that takes you from town to your place. You know that when you enter into that matatu, you will get home, or your Uber driver.
Yeah.
But the only place that I've seen Kenyans have quite mistrust on is on elections. And a number of things happen here. First is our history, where elections have been heavily contested. So the contestation around elections is a big issue. Number two, again from history, again you have to understand that Kenyans are coming from in 1992, 97, 2002, and then 2007. Without, when we never had this new constitution that we're having today. So a lot of mysteries were around our elections, a lot of opaqueness were there in these elections. So that mindset from Kenyans is taking so long to come out from. So they don't trust you. We don't trust you. We will label you already, depending on how you speak, what language you speak, where you come from. Is a big issue on elections, because elections is about resources. So when these resources are unevenly distributed across the country, so Kenyans are very suspicious on the person who wields power. That's the first thing. So the second thing is also about institutions that Kenyans have put to themselves to manage these elections. The IEBC is just one of those institutions that are supposed to help in these elections. We think IEBC is the only body that delivers elections. IEBC must work, as you say, the tree. Election is like a tree, Ivory Coast. IEBC is just a forest. You said a forest, isn't it? Yeah. So the election, for you to deliver these elections, you must have a forest idea, where the National Police Service play their role, the media yourselves play your role, the IEBC play their role, that at the end of the day, then elections is delivered according to what we have put down in our constitution. So when these institutions do not do what they're supposed to do, like you saw the split screen in 2022, when you see the police handle or mishandle voters, when you see IEBC officials in one way or the other mishandling voters, then we have a big problem. So the trust deficit in institutions also plays a very key role. So, like other countries, I was in Ghana in December, I was shocked, maybe Kumar will tell us, I was shocked in Ghana that the ballot paper boxes are in the police stations. They were in the police station. The boxes were after guys had voted, they were all heaped in a nearby polling station. There was no problem. Police were just there. The community was there. The PO was just there. There was just an open process. So the trust in these institutions is critical. And I think for me, that's how we need to learn. How do we trust the institutions that are supposed to deliver in elections, but also even ourselves? I think trust is, I don't know whether trust is a moral problem. It's a moral problem. I don't think it's a legal problem, even though because to what India has. You guys use electronic. You deploy electronic voting
EVMs,
voting machines. We have a similar thing in Kenya. We employ the KIMS. You have a paper audit trail. An audit trail. We don't have it. So you can have as many safeguards to enhance trust, but even at a personal level, trust must be. You also earn it, by the way. You also earn it.
But there must be a modicum of it at the very beginning for you to start.
Exactly.
It must be half full at least.
Yeah.
And so now all these other processes then lead you to fill up the tank.
I agree.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So in this case, interesting. But I just bouncing off of what you're saying. To then say, Balozi, if we are saying that across the subcontinent, this election is happening over 44 days, is bringing in 15 million people to essentially deliver an election for 650 million people who voted, right?
Yeah.
Is the outcome usually one that can be audited? And people can say, yes, this happened at this place and this happened at this place and we're okay. If we look at what, and then Marcus can attest to as well, you have all of these forms. There's 34A, there's 34B, there's 34C, and then 34D is the one that the chairman of the Electoral Commission essentially will open up at the place we call Bomas. I don't know where it's going to be now that Bomas no longer exists, but okay. Now it's held up and the election is, the result of the election is announced. Kenyans generally don't have an issue with the election for 5 of the candidates on the paper. Usually that's okay. 1,600 elections are carried out. But there is a problem with one, and that is the position of president. So for some reason, this process doesn't lack trust. There's no trust deficit for MCA, Member of Parliament, Women Rep, Senator, and Governor. But there's a problem with the president. So anybody and all these people for whom there's no trust deficit, everything is more or less okay. But then at this level, which happens to be on the same ballot paper, there is an issue. Now, I don't know if that is historical, but then what processes are there to safeguard what might be an issue when somebody says, well, I'm okay voting for Dennis and I don't see a problem, but then you guys somewhere have mucked things up in the process of selecting Dennis as president. Do you have that? And if so, how do you deal with that?
Right. That's a good question. So I'll just take a minute and expand a bit more on the EVMs that we are talking about, the electronic voting machines.
Yeah.
So these are small, robust machines that are designed in-house in the country, and they have been present since the 2004 general elections at a national level when we talk about. And these machines are not connected to anything outside. They are not connected to internet. They don't even need electricity. They are battery-powered, robust machines, tamper-proof.
Okay.
And so over the years, over the past 20 years in the general elections, there have been many tests, there have been hackathons, there have been, the Supreme Court has come up with directives, and it has been well established that the EVMs are tamper-proof. So once you cast your vote, and also I'll come back to the paper audit trail, and just to paint a picture of how the voting looks like. So you go there, you go to the polling station, you go in front of your EVM, the voting machine, you see these options, A, B, C, D, E.
These are of the individuals you're selecting,
candidates of the particular political party. You press the button that you want to vote for, and then a paper slip is shown on the EVM. It comes up, you see who you have waited for, it remains there for 7 seconds and then it drops down. And it remains in the EVM. On the day of the counting, there's a directive by the Supreme Court that of the whole state where the assembly elections have happened, 5 are randomly selected, and from there all the paper audit trails are correspondent with what has been recorded with the EVM. Okay. So there's a check and balance. And of course, I think like Kenya, when the voting happens, it's live, real time. People can see in which constituency what vote has happened and what is the numbers like. So I'll say that it all comes from rules, data, and eyes.
So
because everyone's looking at it.
Okay, so it's not possible that what is collected in the EVM is what is collated. And it is not possible to give a number, even one above or one below, that is different from what is collected in the EVM.
No, it is not, because it remains in the EVM. The counting happens through the EVM. Nothing is taken out, nothing goes in. It remains.
Nobody
there.
is standing saying 1,
no,
2, 3.
No.
Okay. I'm just asking because. Okay. So this machine, like you said, hackathons have happened. It's fully tested. So you get to the point whereby this machine is handling all the counting. So long as there is a human on the other side and it's verified and they make the selection, so everything remains in this.
Yes.
Is there a server somewhere where all of this information is held?
No. So on the election day, counting happens across multiple regions in the country where from different polling booths, the EVMs are stored at a central location in, say, a city or a town in a secure location. The Election Commission gives a specific date and time when the counting starts. And then the counting starts in all of these places simultaneously. And they are not connected to...
Simultaneously?
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, because they're stored in different...
different places. Yeah. And then they are not connected to a server where the data will be uploaded. It remains there, the data comes out. And there are election observers, agents, everyone is there and everyone can see it real time. And the count keeps...
So truly, the results of an election is counted, announced, and remains at the polling station, as it were, at the station where this thing is stored.
Yes.
Okay.
You see, now, there's something I want to say. Yeah. You see, I think we need, in terms of, because you said we are learning from each other. I think we can learn from India. That even though these two countries generally have, we deploy technology in our elections, and we know, and now this tells us something, that technology in itself does not enhance trust. In itself, it does not. I think the reason why we agreed to use this or go this way was to somehow deal with the trust deficit in our elections. And I'll come back to the question she was asking about why amongst the elections we have a problem with the presidential election. But back to what Kumari is saying, the question around the audit, the voter verifiable audit trail, it allows, the way I've seen it, I think it allows the citizen, the voter, to understand, to see how is that the vote that he casted or she casted, it counts.
Right.
It's a big thing. So I think while we have Kimskit as a country, the controversy still persists in terms of, or you saw in even the last Supreme Court issues, there were this question around fake areas. But I think there's need for us as a country to then adopt a visible verification mechanism. Not just digital process, but I think how that the opaqueness. The question is the polling station, the voter at a polling station votes, no problem. The results are then scanned and sent to the tallying center. So there is always this opaque level this darkness between the time the scanned, it's scanned and sent, and what you see. There appears to be a problem there. So that for me is, if an audit trail could be, we could learn from India as a country, this very verifiable audit trail, which then allows us to confirm that our vote truly counts, is something that I think we can employ as a country. Because truly, Yes, there
Yeah,
is.
I think Marcus, well, I agree with what you're saying. My question to Kumar is, and I want to give context before I ask this question. The trust deficit is not on election day, actually. What we have is a history in Kenya where there are trust issues first and foremost from how the commission that manages the election is set up to begin with. We start from there. So you have IEBC, how it's been formed, how it's been constituted. There are trust issues. Then we start talking about civic education. We talk about registration. On election, all this is happening before election day. Now, we come to election day, 6 in the morning, and I've covered enough elections where now we are covering live from everywhere in the country. There are certain sections of this country where ballot boxes don't even arrive up until even midday. And the election's supposed to start at 6 in the morning. So you're dealing with those kind of issues. Then there is the part where somebody goes to vote and then they're told they don't actually exist in a register. And they've queued for hours waiting to vote. And the argument is, but I registered, but they can't be found. So there's a question of register. And we've always had, people talking about, let's open this register. Are we going manual? Are we going digital? Then the voting happens. After the voting happens, and was lifting the hand at the polling. So there's the lifting of the hands. This number of, this person has voted, person has been voted in. So people are counting manually. So it's happening, all that. Then there is transporting this now to the tallying center, where there's a trust issue. People don't also trust how this thing is being transported. Then there is now the numbers that we receive. The numbers are adding up. There's a person X, presidential candidate A, has received this number of votes. Then there is the question of there's a server that does not exist in this country. This server exists somewhere else where these numbers are going in there. So my question, Kumar, is explain how India then manages to break this trust issue from how is your commission then constituted, number one. Then how is this process of voter the voter registration? How are these votes? You've said I think the EVMs. You if I remember, you said they are designed in India. So we have also a trust issue of where all these things are done. Everything for us is outsourced. How do you print your own ballots? Do you get your own system? Everything is within India. Do you outsource anything? And the issue of the commission.
Okay. So I'll answer the second question first. Everything is done within India. For instance, even the election ink that we use once you cast your vote, I think it happens here in Kenya as well, on the forefinger of your left hand. The election ink is also made in India. And this is actually exported to other countries as well, because we have done such a good job at it. And on the aspect of the election commission, the structure and how it's set up, so under the Article 324 of our constitution, this body was made. So the first elections happened in independent India was in 1952. Since then, this body has been leading the preparation and organization and conduction of the elections. So the election commission has 3 commissioners, and one of them is the chief election commissioner. And the election commissioners are nominated by a select panel of 3 people. And from there, it goes to the parliament, it gets approved there, and then finally it's nominated by the president of India. And the election commission is independent, has a lot of power during the elections. They can pull anyone up and say, oh, why you're not doing your job? Anywhere, if there's any, I'll say, some irregularities, they have the power to summon people. They also act as the custodian and safeguardian of the elections. The third aspect of what you said about the voting rolls, and also in India we have this thing called the election photo identity card called the EPIC. So everyone has to have an election card, and before the elections you go there. Actually, the election people come to your houses. They verify. This is months in advance of the election. They verify that this person is there and he'll be voting from
Wait,
this
people
person.
come to your, people go to houses?
People go to houses and see how many people are there. So there's a full, it's months and years of preparation that goes into one general election.
So this does not happen a year before the election?
No, this happens months before the election.
Months before the election.
Because, again, the scales are so big and the population is so large that you have to prepare and plan everything well in advance. Apart from, again, I believe the question there again was on trust and how the government functions. So there's this thing called the Model Code of Conduct in the Indian elections. As soon as the elections are announced, the MCC, we call it, it comes into place. And then the government can't campaign, there can be no advertisements by the government. So the government sort of takes a step back and lets the election commission come into the front seat.
And you said how many form the Election Commission of India?
Three people at the hem. Three election commissioners.
So yes. This is the chairperson.
Yes,
and two others.
Yes.
Is there anybody else who works within the commission?
There are many people, but these three people are the one who. So it's a whole. It's an organization.
Okay.
There's secretarial staff and all, of course, and there's a whole hierarchy. But these three people head the commission.
Okay, one would imagine that in an election, and as you see that it has been tried and practiced over time, that the intention is to want to get better at what you do, to be more transparent, to be more accountable, to be more efficient, in making it so. And we have seen that as the world has changed. I mean, we are currently in the communication and technology age. That's where we are, and that's how the world operates. And I see a question that has come through for a lot of people, and I guess this is something for both of us here, because it is clear that human error, unfortunately, is an ingredient that then leads towards dissatisfaction, and then unfortunately, in many cases, has led towards conflict. We can't run away from that. That the human element or the human aspect will often bring about mistakes, whether they are intentional or otherwise, that will lead to some kind of dissatisfaction. Technology is secure. It has been designed to be that way. And one of them is blockchain. Blockchain as a way that stores information and that you can then go pull it out, check it, it can store it for however long. Is this something that is being employed or can be employed? If we look at it, we'll start with you, Marcus.
I think it can be employed, or rather it should be employed, because of the fact that, remember, I don't know, you're talking about India, you talk about 900 plus million voters. So if you are to give room for human error, it will be very massive. But I think the fact that the many safeguards, and I think that's why even in Kenya, when Dennis was asking about, you count, you put, I think it's part of safeguarding. I saw that also in Ghana, by the way. They do the counting. They do this. And actually the people count. It's not even the PO. The people actually count.
They're all there counting.
They're all there counting.
Yeah.
It was
Imagine counting 650.
Yeah, so you can imagine. So it's serious. So I think the blockchain thing is important. I think the IEBC, I think we're moving there. That we may not get to where India is, at least now. I mean, maybe in 2027, maybe about 30 million voters. We might get there, and maybe in India, probably when we get to 30, they might be getting into probably close to a billion voters. So I think these safeguards must be employed, and especially in an era where mis and disinformation is increasingly becoming a big issue. And maybe at some point, Kuma could tell us how they're dealing with the questions around mis and disinformation around the electoral processes, and that's a big issue. And the other thing I wanted to say just about the way Dennis was asking about the onboarding of the commissioners, so that you see, and I like the idea you brought, that the question of trust. The trust is something that is built over time. It begins with how you onboard commissioners, on how you do the processes themselves. How did you register voters? How do you educate voters? How do the political party primaries Why were they conducted? Because Kenya is we are big on party primaries. India is, but not as big as ours. I was doing some research there about last evening. And it is highly centralized. Ourselves, we do our party primaries, and it could be very chaotic. So that entire process, because elections is both a process and an event. So if this process has also suffered a trust deficit, ultimately the goal will be also a big issue. So you have 3 commissioners, we have 7. So you imagine, Dennis, that you have for 900 million plus voters, you have 3. For 22 million, you have 7. Interesting.
Interesting comparisons.
Yeah.
Back to that question that Undu was asking Kumar about technology, because India is also very big in technology, blockchain. How do you adopt or even adapt to new technologies when it comes to elections? Do you always, because in Kenya, for example, every election, there will always be something that is introduced. Last election, we had a situation for purposes of trust and transparency, where at the polling station, once somebody has voted, and then the transmission now of those results from 34A, we were able to have actually access. There was a link where you could go, see the forms, see how the numbers are coming in. How does it work in India?
So on the question of blockchain, as Indu just mentioned, I'll say that's an interesting idea. It's not being used in India right now, but it's also fairly new technology.
Yeah.
It needs to be tried, tested. Also, people have to have trust in the technology that, it's tamper-proof, how does it work? And first of all, they also need to understand what the technology exactly is. So before things are put on implemented in an election, which is the most fundamental part of a democracy, it should be tried, tested, and everyone should be satisfied that it works comfortable with it. So that takes time. So technology that has just come in over the last decade, I think it's a bit too early. Let it mature a bit, and then it might be used in the elections. But
when you talk about election, everything pretty much is all on cost of running elections. In Kenya, we're talking about 61 billion shillings. I've just checked, India is around 100,000 crores, which is approximately $7 billion. I don't know, maybe you can correct me if I'm right or wrong. And we look at, does India print physical papers? Everything is digital.
No, we don't print ballot papers.
So no ballot printing.
So no budget for papers.
No budget for papers, right?
Also saves a lot of trees.
Environment.
The forest.
That is very important. So here we talk about an election that is both digital and physical, because there is the paper. The reason why we have to keep on counting 1 till 100,000 until when we finish. But how much has India saved in terms of going digital, in terms of also saving time, in terms of the election? And what can Kenya learn from what India is doing? You could go.
Right. Thank you, Dennis, for the question. I'll say that I don't have the figures on me, how much does it cost and how much we have saved. But the objective in mind when we put in the EVMs was, of course, to ensure that the elections are as transparent as they can be. They can't be tampered with. So I do, off the top of my head, I don't think reducing the cost was the motivating factor towards moving towards EVM. But I'm sure of, if I just apply common sense, I believe it must have reduced the cost a lot, because also it reduces a lot of logistics costs. It reduces printing of ballot papers, and a lot of the administrative costs are reduced as well. But I can't give you a figure as such.
Yeah.
Maybe Marcus can.
So Marcus, here now we talk about gotten rid of the papers. There is no printing the papers in London, then transporting it. Then the question of how it arrived here, is it safe? Has it been tampered with? That does not exist. But in Kenya, this is what we deal with every day, which then brings in the question of trust that everything that has been printed is up to par. Because I remember when during the voting day, different ballot papers were found in different constituencies in the country, and we saw how the delay that happened. What must Kenya learn in terms of going digital, and how that will save time and bring in trust.
And to just give more meat to his question, I was looking at statistics here. There's a report that is talking about how much countries then are spending on each voter.
Yeah.
And Kenya is the highest globally
in the world.
Yes. So Rwanda spent 112 shillings per voter. Uganda, it's 1,400. Zambia, it's 600. Nigeria is 1,000. And then Kenya is 2,000
Per voter.
This is per voter, tying into what Asato is asking.
Yeah, but then I think there's a debate in terms of comparative elements. So, for example, Rwanda doesn't have 6 elections on one day. So I think there have been debates even within the Electoral Commission among election professionals in the country. When you say our elections are expensive, you say 2,000 per voter compared with, say, 112 shillings. So what is your benchmark? Do they do things that we do? Do they print ballot boxes outside the country, papers outside the country? Do even their ballot papers, do they have the same security features as Kenya's?
Do they print at all?
Do they print at all? Exactly. So I think at some point we'll need to have a discussion about the cost of elections and the parameters we are using to compare. And we as ELOG addressed the question around the cost of elections. We've done 2 studies actually. But then we have asked the same question over and over again. You can't compare Kenya and Uganda in terms of cost of elections.
Why?
Because of our elections are different. You only compare people who are of similar.
So you can't compare apples and oranges.
You can't.
So you'd rather
compare an apple with an apple.
An apple with an apple, even if it's a different species.
Exactly.
So, Marcus, one would say, if you look at majorly, our printing a ballot paper is expensive because of the security features that are there, and this is because we do not trust each other during voting. The reason why you must have all these security features.
Exactly, and that for me is what I was going to the same question you had asked earlier. The Electoral Commission of India, and Kumar, you can, I think it enjoys very massive, not only constitutional safeguards, but also massive public trust. So if you trust the referee, the way you trust your daktari, if you go there and say you have malaria, you will take those dawas and go home. I think if we can have, if we Kenyans can, and I think this is a very sensitive matter. If Kenyans can trust the Electoral Commission, I think it will reduce significantly the amount of money we spend in our elections.
Okay.
Yeah, in Ghana, for example, they print their ballot papers in Ghana.
In Ghana, yes.
And there were last-minute changes when I was there. In Kenya, imagine you printing the ballot papers in River.
Never.
It will be it's a disaster.
Or you tell people on the 20s, on the second Thursday or second Tuesday in June, that you want to make a change to the ballot paper because one security feature was off. People will go to war.
They will go to war.
Because there's a question. So now in the and this is probably if our last question because of what time then does allow, when we talk about partisanship, when you look at an electoral body, how is that body selected? And we're not necessarily comparing apples and oranges here. We are talking about lessons that can be learned from other jurisdictions. Because here, the selection of the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, if they were walking down the road and the presidential convoy passed and the president looked in the direction of the gentleman who was walking and that person happens to be the one who was selected, we will say, no, there's partisanship here. So how has it been that the electoral body is actually independent? Here, political parties have a say in who is a part of the selection panel that will select the commissioners of the IEBC. Already people are saying, no, they had a hand in it. How do you then steer clear of any kind of partisanship when it comes to the selection of an electoral body? Kamar?
Right. So the process of selection is also by law. These are laws that have been established, passed by the parliament, and have been heard by the Supreme Court, approved by the Supreme Court as well. So I'll just give one, since we are a bit low on time, I'll just give you one element of it, that the selection panel that nominates who should be a part of the election commission also includes the leader of the opposition party. So they also have a say.
Okay.
So there's a sort of the party in government and the party in opposition, all of them come together and they agree on, oh, this person should be the chief election commissioner. There are also safeguards against removing that a particular person who has been in the election commission, because this again has to go through the process of impeachment. At the end of the day, has to be removed by the president. So these are all things that have been in place for a fairly long time and have evolved over time, as and when things have changed, and therefore they enjoy a lot more trust in the process. I'll just add one more thing to what Marcus said about participation and how do we get people to come out and vote. So the Election Commission has this program called the SWEEP. It's the Systematic Voter Education Program. Again, months in leading up to the election, we have celebrities come out, do advertisements and tell people go out and vote and how important it is, because at the end of the day, it's you want more and more people to come out, vote and assert their democratic right.
Right.
And that is the goal that the Election Commission also wants to achieve.
Well,
but just a second.
Yeah.
You know, it's good to see what UD has just done in the party primaries. They employed a digital voting system, and it went well.
Okay.
It went well.
Well, let's see if that can be. You know what is going to happen? If
Yeah.
you suggest that at the national level, people will ask who is behind you.
Exactly.
And now you want to bring it to the national level.
But you see, we can learn. You see, if even in the last elections, ODM, UDA, they did some of them did party primaries using their digital tools, and they were less.
Yes, I have a quick one. Just
I have 10 seconds, Dennis.
Just 10 seconds.
Right.
Who announces the results? Is it the chair of the commission? After the elections, after voting has been done, tallying has been done, who makes the announcement?
It is the Election Commission that makes it. It's not one person coming out with a mic and saying this person has won.
Okay. But so remember,
it's not also
it's
we
not
have to understand it's not
presidential,
presidential.
it's parliamentary.
It's a parliamentary form.
Yeah.
So MPs are elected, and then say for so we have 543 seats in the lower house, the Lok Sabha that we call, of which you need 272, 50% to make majority. So if you have more than 272, if you have 272 members of parliament, the leader of the party which has the most number of seats, he goes and tells the president that I want to make the government.
Right.
And then the government is formed.
Because they have the majority. Interesting stuff. And looking at how we can actually learn from each other and looking forward to a system that works. Trust seems to be the overarching issue here. Thank you both for being here this morning. There'll be many, many more conversations around elections, of course, as we're getting into them. Marcus Agenga is the program coordinator for ELOG, which is the Elections Observation Group, and Rishab Kumar Rawar, head of Commerce and Press, the High Commission of India to Kenya. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Gentlemen, asante sana. Past at 9:03. More conversations after this. Don't go away.
This is the Situation Room, the only